The rain drummed against the windows of Murphy's diner, creating a steady rhythm that filled the quiet evening air. Sarah wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, her movements slow and deliberate. The diner was nearly empty, save for an elderly man nursing his coffee in the corner booth and a young woman reading a book by the window. Sarah had worked at Murphy's for nearly 5 years now. The red vinyl booths and checkered floor had become as familiar to her as her own bedroom. She knew every crack in the ceiling, every squeak in the floorboards. This place had been her anchor through some of the hardest times of her life. The bell above the door chimed softly as someone stepped inside, shaking droplets of rain from their jacket. Sarah looked up to see a young man, probably in his early 20s, with dark hair plastered to his forehead. His clothes were damp, and he carried a worn backpack that looked like it had seen better days. He hesitated by the entrance, scanning the nearly empty diner before choosing a booth near the back. Sarah grabbed a menu and walked over, her soft-soled shoes making barely a sound on the linoleum. "Evening," she said with a warm smile. "Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu?" The young man glanced up, and Sarah noticed his tired eyes. There was something about his expression that reminded her of herself when she first started working here. Uncertain, a little lost. "Just water, please," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded and returned with a glass of ice water, setting it down gently. "Take your time with the menu. No rush at all." She watched him from behind the counter as he studied the laminated pages. His eyes lingered on the prices, and she saw him check his pockets twice. There was a heaviness to his movements that spoke of more than just physical tiredness. 20 minutes passed before he flagged her over again. When Sarah approached his table, she noticed he had organized a small collection of crumpled bills and loose change on the table, counting and recounting the money. "I'll have the soup of the day, please," he said, still looking down at the menu. Sarah glanced at the modest pile of money. The soup was the cheapest item on the menu at $4.50, but even then, his collection of coins and worn bills looked like it might fall just short. "Coming right up," she said, not mentioning the money at all. In the kitchen, Sarah ladled a generous portion of the hearty vegetable soup into a bowl. She added an extra roll and a pat of butter, then returned to his table. As she set down the meal, she could see the relief in his eyes. When she brought the check 20 minutes later, she watched as he carefully counted his money again. She could see the math wasn't working in his favor. He was about 75 cents short. The young man looked up at her with embarrassed eyes. "I'm sorry," he began, his voice thick with shame. "I thought I had enough, but..." Sarah smiled and gently pushed the money back toward him. "Don't worry about it. The soup is on the house tonight." "No, I can't let you do that," he protested, but Sarah was already shaking her head. "Everyone needs a warm meal sometimes," she said simply. "Pay it forward when you can." The gratitude in his eyes was unmistakable. He gathered his things slowly, as if he didn't want to leave the warmth of the diner. At the door, he turned back and nodded once, a silent thank you that needed no words. Years passed like pages turning in a well-loved book. Sarah continued working at Murphy's, watching the seasons change through the same rain-streaked windows. She saved money slowly, dreaming of someday going back to school to become a nurse. It had always been her dream, but life had a way of putting dreams on hold. Her apartment was small, and some months were harder than others. The $4.50 she had spent on that young man's soup years ago had been forgotten, just one of many small kindnesses she had offered over the years. Sarah believed in helping when you could, even in small ways. One Tuesday evening, as Sarah was preparing to close the diner, a well-dressed man in his 30s entered. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't quite place it. His confident stride and expensive suit seemed out of place in the humble diner. "Are you Sarah?" he asked, approaching the counter where she stood counting the day's receipts. "Yes," she replied, studying his face. "Do I know you?" The man smiled, and suddenly she could see the uncertain young man he had once been. "You probably don't remember me. It was about 6 years ago. I came in during a rainstorm, ordered soup, and couldn't pay for it all." Sarah's eyes widened as the memory came flooding back. "You were soaked from the rain." "That's right." He extended his hand. "I'm David Chen, and I never forgot your kindness that night." Sarah shook his hand, still amazed by the transformation. "You look like you're doing well for yourself." David nodded, his expression growing serious. That night, I was at the lowest point in my life. I had just aged out of foster care, had no family, no support system. I was trying to make it on my own, but I was failing. I hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. He paused, looking around the familiar diner. Your kindness, that simple act of paying for my soup, it meant everything to me. But more than that, it reminded me that there were still good people in the world. It gave me hope when I had none left. Sarah felt tears gathering in her eyes. I'm just glad you're okay. More than okay, David said, reaching into his jacket. I put myself through college, got a degree in computer engineering. I started a tech company 3 years ago, and we just went public last month. He handed her an envelope. I've been looking for you for months. I wanted to find you, to thank you, and to return the favor. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a check made out to her name. The amount made her gasp. $50,000. David, I can't accept this, she whispered. Please, he said gently. You told me to pay it forward when I could. This is me paying it forward. I know you work hard, and I want you to have the chance to pursue your dreams, whatever they are. Sarah looked at the check again, then at David's earnest face. I always wanted to be a nurse, she said softly. Then be a nurse, David said with a smile. And when you're helping patients someday, remember that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change someone's entire life. As Sarah held the check, she realized that what she had given David that rainy night wasn't really the soup at all. It was dignity, respect, and the simple message that he mattered. And now, years later, he was giving her the same gift, the chance to become who she was meant to be. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping gently against the windows of Murphy's Diner, where dreams had the power to change lives.